I've played quite a lot of Ark Survival Ascended, and I mean quite a lot, but would you believe me if I told you that in all the time I played, I had only ever played the first map, the island, and that I had actually never beaten the map? Well, today I wanted to change that, so I gave myself 100 in-game days to defeat the 3 tribute bosses and the Overseer all on alpha difficulty. A quick disclaimer, I did use some quality of life mods in the playthrough. With that being said, let's see if I can clear the island and ascend within 100 days. On the beginning of day 1, I woke up on one of the beaches of the island. I scratched the stone in my wrist and got up and started off by grabbing some stones, fibre, wood and thatch off the ground. Using those materials, I made myself a pickaxe and beat a rock into submission until it gave me flint. This would be used to make a hatchet. I'd also make a reusable spear, and then make a campfire and chuck some food on it so I wouldn't starve. In Ark, one of the many resources you tend to constantly struggle to have enough of is hide. So I decided to begin my hide hunt early and begin rampaging the beach. After turning a moss chops into a porcupine, I headed back over to my campfire, grabbed my food, and began my long journey over to where I wanted to build my base. And as day turned to night, I made it to the location I had chosen. I had previously seen this location and thought it could be a good place to build a base. So I began cutting down loads of trees. With all the wood gathered, I began placing foundations to finish off day 1. Day 2, I continued to work on my base, adding some ramps to the foundations, and making a few storage containers. This was all until I saw a supply drop coming down nearby. I'd make a sleeping bag in case I died and began heading over to the supply drop. Little did I know, this would be one of my biggest mistakes. Sadly, by the time I made it up to where the supply drop was, it had despawned, and I was not happy about it. But that wasn't the mistake. The mistake was when I was heading back to my base, I noticed a Therizinosaurus next to the waterfall, and I caught the attention of it. But I wouldn't realize this until I was back at my base. I decided that even though this could be really dangerous, I wanted to try and trap the Theory. So I began getting the materials, building my trap. I also spoiled some meat and began making some trank arrows. At the beginning of day 3, I realized if I was going to tame that Theory, I was going to need lots of narco berries. So I decided to tame a parasaur. I threw a bowler at it and then committed some unspeakable crimes to the parasaur. Once done, I'd put some berries into its inventory and then leave it there to tame up. Whilst waiting, I headed back to my base to make a saddle, and by the time I returned to my new dino, it was tamed and already in its first fight with an Ichthyornis.
Fight!
With the Ichthyornis defeated, I took my parasaur back to my place and did some lawnmower simulator to get more narco berries for narcotics. I then realized that the Theory is nowhere near my base anymore, but that wasn't going to stop me, so I picked up my trap and headed down to the beach and set it back up. It was now time to lure the Theory into my trap, so I shot it and got it to follow me, and I managed to get it into the trap. Sadly, I was killed in the process, and so was my parasaur, but once I returned, I started to trank the dino up. Too bad luck was not on my side. And whilst taming the Theory, it managed to destroy the trap and break free and escape. I was not happy to say the least. I've never seen such an aggressive fucking Theory, and it's because a fucking Dilo kept walking like right next to it and pissing it off. I spent the beginning of day 4 repairing the trap so I could pick up all the pieces. I then decided to repurpose it to catch a trike that was wandering nearby. I may not have been able to get the Theory, but I was going to get a dinosaur no matter what. Once the trike had been tamed up, the first thing I did was start to get more narco berries, as I had used up all my narcotics and trank arrows, trying to get the Theory and then this trike. I then continued to work on my base and craft 2 forges so I could start smelting some metal. On the morning of day 5, I made my smithy and decided that it would be a good time to start thinking about taming a pteranodon. But to make the saddle, I would need 230 hide, 125 fiber, and 75 chitin. I had the hide and the fiber, but I need to go and get some chitin. And this early in the game, there's really only one source. So I head out to go and kill some trilobites. I marked some on my map and went hunting. The first trilobite I killed decided to tease me and give me 74 chitin. So I went off, killed one more, and went back to my base where I made the pteranodon saddle. I then instantly headed out to catch my new dino. For the entire time I had been at my base, there had been a Gigantoraptor behind my base with a child. So to feed my pteranodon prime meat, I headed over and got rid of the Gigantoraptor and its kid. I then went back over to my dino and finished taming it up with my brand new pteranodon. I took it over to the beach nearby to start grabbing some metal from the little beach rocks to finish off day 5. Day 6 started with me luring an Argentavis into a trap so I could tame it. Even though I had only just gotten my Pteranodon, I wanted an Argy. This is because Argies can hold a lot more than Pteranodons, so for future metal runs I would definitely need one. So I lured it into a trap, shot it a few times until it was knocked out. I then abducted a baby parasaur and used the prime meat it drops to tame up my Argy. Whilst the Argy was taming, I decided to head over to the volcano. On the island, Gigas and Carchadontosauruses like to spawn in the volcano, pretty much meaning you can get free Giga Hearts, which I would need later on. So I lured both of the dinos into the lava until they burnt, and I then robbed them of their hearts. By the time that was done, my Argy had finished taming, so I ran over and shoved him into one of my balls and headed back to base, where I made the Argy saddle. What I wasn't aware of at the time was that I had accidentally lured an Alpha Carno back to my base. Thankfully, the Carno fell down the waterfall, but I would need to deal with it. I quickly grabbed some Explorer notes on my Argy for the XP boost, and I then began fighting the Carno. It took me until the end of day 6 to kill the Alpha Carno. On day 7, I decided that I wanted to start to get some of my resource farming dinos, so I set up a little trap at my base so I could tame an Anki and a Doedicurus. With the trap set up, I went and grabbed an Anki from the mountains and dropped it into my trap. I then shot him a few times until he was knocked out, where I would leave it to tame up. But whilst I was waiting on my Anki, I headed back out to grab myself the other dino. It just happened that there was a Doedicurus down on the beach nearby.
Don't worry, buddy, I've got you. To safety!
Fuck me, he was getting absolutely railed by every creature on the island. After grabbing it, I dropped it in the same trap as the Anki, but it was currently too injured to tame, so I would need to leave it there for a bit to heal up. Eventually, the Anki tamed up and I instantly headed off onto my first of many metal runs. As the sun rised on day 8, I headed back to my base with an Anki full of metal. I chucked all of the metal into my forges and then made myself a spyglass. The rest of the day was full of me flying around the map on my Pteranodon. The Dino Finder doesn't work well if you haven't explored the map and loaded all the dinos in, but my main reason for flying around was to find beaver dams so I could get some of that sweet, sweet cementing paste. I robbed quite a few beaver dams, and I even looted a yellow drop. Too bad for me, the Ark gods just weren't on my side. I then looted my final beaver dam and headed back to my base, finishing the day off by making some brand new flak armor. Day 9 started off with me tranking out the Doedicurus, so I showed it a few times and it fell asleep. Whilst waiting for it to tame up, I decided it was time for me to get some revenge on the Theries and tame one up. So I crafted myself a Theory saddle, and once the Doedicurus had woken up, I put it to work, farming some stone. I wasn't going to make the same mistake as the first time. At least, that's what I thought. I crafted some stone gates, headed over, built the trap, and tried luring a Theory into it. Clearly, I had forgotten to take into account the fact Theories aren't that big. So with that in mind, I set up a new trap and lured the Theory into it. And after some peaceful negotiations between the Theory and my train carriers, the Theory went to sleep.
There we go, Theory down.
At the beginning of day 10, I decided to rampage through the dino population to try and bring my hide levels back up. After making all these saddles, my stock levels were very low. Eventually, my Theory tamed up. I straight away started using him to farm wood. With all my material harvesting dinos tamed up, I could now finally begin construction on my base. So day 10 ended with me stuck standing still, crafting some of the items I would need for my house. Now please enjoy my beautiful art skills. My plan is to build my base as a giant circle off the waterfall, with my indie forge then getting placed on its own little platform in the middle of the circle. But this is going to require lots of materials. Day 11 all the way to the end of day 15 was spent farming materials and building up the base. So what better way to show you than with a quick building montage. Day 16 began with me putting some more wood into my forges. I then decided to please all of my American viewers and go and grab some oil. Don't worry guys, I appreciate your support. After grabbing enough oil to last a lifetime, I headed back up to the volcano and made my Anki work for its food by smacking up some more metal nodes, and I wasn't done with him yet. Once we were back at base, it was now time for my Anki to destroy some regular rocks. As you might have guessed by now, I grabbed all of these items so that I could make a fabricator. With my brand new fabricator made and placed, I straight away put it to good use and made an industrial grill. And then so I didn't need to burn through too much gasoline, I made a generator to power the entire base. Day 17 started off with my RG and I mugging the spiner for both its prime meat and spino sail. But I wasn't done there. I also robbed this Bronto of its prime meat and its vertebrae, and then cooked all that prime meat up in my industrial grill back at base and went to tame an Ichthyosaurus. After giving it its first feed, I would now need to wait a while for it to be hungry again. So nearby, I noticed an alpha raptor had trapped itself between a rock and a hard place. And what the raptor didn't know is that I am that hard place. So I beat up the raptor, taking its pride and loot with me. I then finished taming the Ichthyosaurus and put all of that raptor's prime meat into the industrial grill. Then got back on the polymer grind, as I would need lots of it. Then crafted some scuba gear and did another metal run. This was all so I could craft an industrial forge soon. I then grabbed the remaining crystal I'd need for the forge. On day 18, I ended up at the snow killing penguins. This was so I could get some organic polymer. It saved me from needing to go and hunt down more tax-paying beavers and going back up to the volcano again. Once I got back to base, I finally crafted my industrial forge and placed it down. I moved all my metal into it, but you know how I said using organic polymer would stop me from needing to go and loot beaver dams? Well, it didn't. I could hear the sweet voices of cementing paste calling me from across the map. So like the good soon-to-be ruler of the island that I am, I decided to go give my taxpayers a visit and make sure they were paying up. On day 19, I looted a purple drop which just happened to contain some beds and some sap for me. Back at base, the never-ending grind for polymer didn't stop. But I now needed to head into the ocean and get an anglerfish. I wanted an anglerfish for one reason. They are amazing at harvesting pearls, which I would need for electronics. Little did I know, but I may have bitten off more than I could chew. I headed over to the anglerfish's location, dropped in, threw out my itchy, and headed in. There were some megalodons near it, but no big deal. That was until I managed to pin myself in a corner, where I'd get inappropriately touched by an eel and the megalodons.
Really? Oh my god.
After that death, I would quickly tame up a new itchy, only for it to instantly get rolled by another Meg and its 20 other brothers and sisters.
No, stop fucking swimming around! Great, yep, you're dead. Awesome. Fucking awesome, bro. Wow, I fucking put a saddle on him and he instead decides, oh, I'm gonna fight everything in the world. Really?
Day 20, the cycle of death would continue, with me dying a few more times whilst trying to grab my gear. Eventually, I finally managed to get my gear back. I would then tame up another new itchy and head out for a different anglerfish. Even though this one had some megalodons around it, I was ready this time, and dealt with them. I then began knocking out the anglerfish. Finally, on the morning of day 21, the anglerfish was knocked out and I could start taming it. So like always, I went and abducted a baby parasaur and showed it who was boss, until finally grabbing its prime meat, which I then gave to the anglerfish. Eventually, it finished taming up, and I quickly shoved it into my pocket. Now that I had my silica pearl sniffing anglerfish, I could finally start farming them. So I head over to the nearby frozen water and started farming silica pearls. Once I had enough pearls to satisfy my electronic needs, I headed back to base and started crafting an unholy amount of electronics. And then, like usual, the volcano was calling me, and I just couldn't resist. So I headed up and farmed more metal. I also looted a yellow drop with a red ring. Day 22 and my Anki was still hard at work trying to earn those Mejo berries. I took him into the volcano to scrap to some crystals. I then got him to grab even more metal. I wouldn't say I'm addicted to getting metal, I'd say it's more of a codependency between the metal and I. But that's enough about that. I headed back to the base and crafted a chemistry bench. Now that I could make loads of narcotics, I thought it might be a good time to start thinking about taming a thylacoleo. So I crafted a rifle and enough gunpowder to blow up a giga. I also just happened to have enough resources left to craft a biogrinder, so that's exactly what I did. I then headed out to the redwoods because it was time to commit the Great Thyla Purge. For some reason, I had tons of low-level thylas and not enough high-level ones. And it just so happens that thyla claws are a tribute I needed, so it kind of felt like killing two birds with one stone. So the purge began and would push all the way into day 23. Day 23, the purge of the Thylers continued until finally I took a look at the Dino Finder and found 2 decent level Thylers and decided I'd tame them. So I head back to base and started to craft lots of trank darts. On day 24, I put my plan into motion. I placed down a trap and I had grabbed my first Thyler and dropped it into the trap, and then began the long process of knocking it out. Once it was knocked out, I chucked some food into its inventory and very quickly realized I hadn't brought any narcotics. So I quickly grabbed some narco berries to feed it. I then grabbed my trap back and set up some spike walls around it to keep it safe. The second Thyler followed the exact same process. Grab Thyler, drop it in trap, shoot it till it takes a nap, and shove food into its inventory. By the time I was done with that, my first Thyler had finished taming. So I grabbed it and the spiked walls and then had an intense staring competition with this tree until I got bored and decided to tame an otter. Don't get too attached to this girl, she probably won't be around for very long. By the time I was done with the otter, my second Thyler was done taking its nap. Day 25 started off with my RG and I having a train run on us by 2 Alpha Raptors. After I dealt with that problem, I turned back to base just to see that an Ichthyornis had grabbed my Lystro, Chops. It was flying away with him.
Oh my god, he's got Chops! How's he got Chops? Bro just grabbed Chops and just fucking ran with him.
After saving Chops, I threw my Thylers out to breed.
Alright, you guys mate. Breed for me, please.
Whilst waiting, I built a platform for my biogrinder. I then placed my brand new Dino Destroyer 6000 down and realized that I had actually forgotten about my Thylers. After looking at the baby Thyler's stats, I was going to chuck it in the biogrinder, but then realized that the mother was a better fit. I then put my Doedicurus to work mining some rocks, and before I knew it, my Thylers had another child. Sadly for me, this little guy wanted regular kibble, which I didn't have. So I replaced him with his father, and in the biogrinder his father went. I then finished day 25 by chucking lots of timber into the Indie Forge to turn into charcoal for more gunpowder. Day 26 started with me crafting a brand new Thyler saddle for my caving Thyler. Afterwards, I headed out to the snow to quickly grab some oil. Throughout this playthrough, I would constantly need oil, so every now and then I'd head over and collect some. After that, the brand new baby Thyler was born. Unlike the previously forgotten Thyler, I got to this one straight away, and lucky for me, its imprint only wanted a Mejo Berry. I started off day 27 killing trilobites, but not for their chitin. What I was really after was their black pearls. You see, trilobites drop 1 to 4 black pearls when killed, but they have a fairly low chance of dropping them, so I needed to kill quite a few of them. This was so I could use them to make some absorbent substrate, the key ingredient in gas masks. Now that I had my gas masks, I wanted to level my Thyler up before taking it into the caves, so I hunted down a Spino and killed it, and I also ended up running into an Alpha Raptor, which also stood no chance. Once I got back to base from leveling my Thyler up, I made some fridges so I could keep all the kibble I was obtaining somewhere. It wouldn't spoil, and I also made some more narcotics. On day 28, I could hear the metal on the volcano calling for me, pleading with me to come and mine it, so that's exactly what I did. I then headed back to base and began healing up my Thyler with cooked meat. Something I didn't know until I made this video was that cooked meat heals Thylers up quicker than raw meat, apparently. After needing to shove so much food down my Thyler's mouth that its iron levels were high enough that it was probably going to turn into a piece of iron, I realized that I should probably tame a Daeodon or 2, considering eventually I wanted a Rex army, and as I level their health up, they will take ages to heal, and a Daeodon can speed that process up. Before I could grab the Daeodon, I did need to deal with some unwanted guests, but once that was handled, I grabbed my little healing hog and chucked it into its nice little taming pen, and shot it in the face, until it accepted being my friend. On the morning of day 29, I shoved some kibble into the Daeodon's inventory and let it tame up, but there was a new guest just across the little gap in the ice. Thankfully, the avocado didn't cause any issues with the tame. I then rinse and repeat the tame process on another Daeodon, kidnap it, drop it in a trap, shoot it in the face until it accepts me as its leader, and then shoved kibble into its inventory. Now that I had my 2 new Daeodons, it was time for them to get to business and make some children, so I could have enough of them to heal an entire army. I thought it might be a good idea to place down a terminal to capture their babies so I could see their stats. A great part about these terminals in the Dino Depot mod is that they also imprint any dinos they capture, meaning I don't lose anything by using it. With the terminal now placed down, I hopped onto the Daeodon and tried finishing healing up my Thyler, but it didn't have enough food, so I finished healing it with cooked meat and then headed off for the swamp cave. On day 30, I rocked up to the swamp cave and headed in. The swamp cave is full of bugs, spiders, and one of the worst creatures to ever walk the planet of Ark, Arthropleura. But thankfully, they didn't cause me too many issues, and eventually I made it to the one room I cared about. You know, besides for the artifact room. In this room, there's a red drop that you can farm by simply grabbing the drop, then running back to this little crossroads, leaving the game, and then joining back, and the red drop will respawn, allowing you to farm it for good drops. This is the method I used to try and get an Ascendant Rex Saddle blueprint, so cue the farming montage. Oh yes, look at that pump. Oh, 532. Oof, that's a pretty good rifle. Is it expensive? It's actually very affordable. I can definitely do that. I probably will actually, in fact, make that one. That'll be... Then a Rex saddle. But I'm fucking expensive on high. That's way too expensive. Damn. By day 31, I decided to stop farming the drop in the swamp cave. I did make sure to grab the artifact before heading out. I'd now go and hunt down some Carcharodontosauruses that were roaming around the island, because I wanted to tame a Giga for hide farming. These guys being here were a huge no, as they were taking up both spawns. So with my brand new pump shotgun, I put both of them down. I start off day 32 by visiting my local beaver dams and stealing, taking my fair share of what they have worked for, because I'm the tax man. After doing that, I head back to base and put some more thylers through the biogrinder to further increase the amount of kibble I had. Afterwards, the polymer production continued, and I decided to try and tame some Spinos. Spino eggs give lots of XP when killed, meaning I was about to use these Spino babies to power level my Rex army one day. But for now, I instead would struggle to get the Spino into the trap. It just didn't want to go in. So on the morning of day 33, I decided to go for some old-fashioned methods and stand somewhere the Spino couldn't reach me and shoot at it until it fell asleep. With the hunting rifle I got from the swamp cave, it took no time at all for my first Spino to be dead asleep. With the second Spino, I did the same thing. I stood up on a cliff and rained trank darts down on it until it was asleep. And I would now have 2 Spinos ready to breed and create me an infinite supply of eggs. I figured, whilst I was already out taming up loads of creatures, that I would also grab myself a Bronto for max berry farming. And also, why not? Let's grab a Rex as well. Too bad for me, when taming the Rex up, one of the worst things that can happen did happen. Currently on this trip, I've grabbed... No way you guys come over onto my Rex. I spent all of day 34 taming up this amazing 140 female Rex. I originally did try trapping it against the cliff whilst it was attacking another dino, but it managed to slip out. So instead, I built a trap and lured this beauty into it, and gave her a good dose of narcotics. You know what they say, a bunch of narcotics shot into your face keeps the doctor away. After taming up the 140, I wanted to try and kill some Rexes so I could refresh their spawns, until this happened. My Pteranodon's so fucking dumb. To make up for losing my Pteranodon, I grabbed the Rex's child and later threw it into the grinder, so I could get back to my base. I ended up taming up another Pteranodon. I began day 35 by murdering some Rexes. I still wasn't happy that my amazing Pteranodon was dead, so I had to take it out on them. Because its death totally wasn't my fault. Now that I had let out my frustrations, I headed back to base and made an industrial cooker. I would need this to make med brews, lesser antidotes, and even veggie cakes later on. I also made and placed down some vaults to give me somewhere to put all of my items that had been building up. The rest of day 35 was spent waiting for my Spinos to breed and grabbing some berries on my new Bronto. Day 36 starts with me making 100 medical brews. I then also set my new female Spino to breed. then moved all of the blueprints and already crafted items I had from the swamp cave into one of the vaults. And there was a lot of stuff, and I mean a lot. Most of these blueprints I would never use, but it was helpful to have them just in case. Now that all of those items were put away, I headed out to start hunting creatures for hide and meat. Killing creatures for hide would be a constant thing throughout this playthrough, as the Rex Saddle blueprint I got out of the swamp cave was extremely expensive, but I couldn't seem to get a cheaper one. Once back at base, I began making more narcotics and shotgun shells. I then head out and tamed off an oviraptor. Now, you may be looking at me and going, why do you need an oviraptor? Well, to have eggs be collected in the terminals, you need to have an oviraptor in there to collect them. I know, it's a little strange, but it is what it is. On day 37, I was looking for some new theories to tame. My current theory was only there to harvest wood, and its stats weren't ideal for taking out bosses. So I was hoping to get some new theories and start making a boss fighting army. After choosing the first theory I was going to tame, I ended up running into a bit of a problem. Setting up the trap. For some reason, the game said there was a supply drop nearby, so I picked up the trap and rebuilt it. Now that the trap was ready, I grabbed the theory's attention and lured it into my chamber of sleep, and knocked its ass out. I also decided to grab another oviraptor. Sorry to tell you, but to be honest, I lost this guy, like right after I tamed it. I had no idea where I put this oviraptor, so this is probably the first and only time you'll see it. Once both were tamed, I began heading to the next theory, but not before stopping at this yellow drop with a red ring, which contained nothing helpful. Yet again, Arc toys with my emotions. By the start of day 38, I'd finally made it over to the second theory, so I did what must be done. I built a trap, grabbed its attention, tricked it into the trap, knocked it out, and enslaved it for the rest of its days, with the only purpose of breeding me a better theory. And that's exactly what happened. When I got back to base, for some reason, I had started to feel empty inside. Then I remembered that it had been ages since I had gone on a metal run. So I finished day 38 by filling the hole in my heart with sweet, sweet sounds of progress. All I did on day 39 was metal runs. Turns out the hole in my heart was bigger than I thought. So I spent the entire day going back and forth between the volcano, grabbing metal, then chucking it in the Indie Forge, only stopping once to quickly make some more shotgun shells, but then to quickly return back to the volcano. I swear I don't have a problem. I can stop whenever I want. I don't want to. Day 40, I spent flying around the map, reloading in dinos after doing a dino wipe, because yes, I'm allowed to do that. And if you have any issues with it, make sure to leave a comment down below letting me know how angry you are, and I'll make sure not to reply to any of them. Thanks. I ended up making it back to the base just in time to sacrifice some of the Daeodon's offsprings to the almighty grinder. Remember, it's all in the name of progress. As it rolled over to day 41, I felt like it'd be a good time to go and get the easy underwater cave artifact. So I hopped on my Ichthyosaurus and headed in. For the most part, you can just swim through this cave and run into no creatures at all. This was actually the first time I'd ever ran into a creature. Here, after killing the Megalodon, I grabbed the artifact of the brute and headed out. I now wanted to make some lesser antidotes so I could go and explore some of the other caves without getting mega rabies. So I needed some leech blood. Now that I had obtained leech blood, I headed home and put away my shiny new artifact and made some lesser antidotes. I then decided to go and grab the artifact of the clever. Here is how that went. Bite, bite, bite. Oh no, mega rabies. Bite, bite, bite. Hey look, the artifact. Let's get out of here. Day 42 started off with me looting another yellow drop with a red ring. It only had some metal structures and gasoline in it, so yet again, Ark played me. I then head into the cave where the artifact of the hunter was. It went just as you would expect, with my Thyla being completely unstoppable and every single creature that crossed my path getting wiped from existence. I then grabbed the artifact of the hunter, and then on the way out, my fat Thyla got stuck. So I got the luxury of carting everything in its inventory out to my Argy. I then head over to the artifact of the massive. For the artifact of the massive, I do need to be a bit more careful, because one wrong move and both my Thyla and I will be cooked. Literally. Thankfully, nothing went wrong and I managed to get through all of the creatures and finish day 42 off with grabbing another artifact. Let's grab that.
And boom, there we go. Back on our Thyla. Let's get out of here. Woo.
I started day 43 off by moving all of my artifacts into a vault. This vault would be where I would store everything I would need to challenge all of the bosses. Once everything was in the vault, I checked on my Spino egg production to make sure that plenty of eggs were being laid. I then used the magic teleporter in my base to send some dairies off to a much better place. Afterwards, I put some hide in a vault and thought it might be a good idea to try and tame a Basilosaurus. You see, I still had one more artifact to get in the water, and unlike the previous ones, this artifact was not easy to get. So I would need an underwater tame that could handle itself in dangerous situations. So after picking which one I wanted, I headed over.
Holy shit. Bro, my Ichthy!
Yeah, I kind of forgot that manta aren't friendly creatures. And as I was swimming back over, I got the message I had been waiting for.
There he goes. Yeah, it was just a matter of time. That's so annoying.
Even though I had lost yet again another Ichthyosaurus, I wasn't going to give up in taming this Bassie. So after getting my gear, I managed to hook it with a grapple, tame it, and put it onto neutral just before I died. This allowed me to get back to a fully safe area and retrieve my new tame. I then head back home, crafted up a saddle, and made some more scuba gear and headed out on a leveling spree. Day 44 has an interesting story. See, while I was recording it, my mouse and keyboard just stopped working. I couldn't get them to reconnect, so I need to turn my PC off. And once I did turn it back on, the recording of the day was corrupted. So yeah, day 44 has been snapped away. Sorry. Day 45, I wanted to try and get some of the alpha tributes from the ocean. There was quite a few of them I would need, so I first headed over and killed some alpha megalodons for their teeth. Next, I went after an alpha Tuso. It just so happened that the Tuso was stuck in a rock and couldn't attack me, but I could attack it. So I spent pretty much the rest of day 45 just wailing on this alpha, trying to kill it for its eye, but also for its tentacles and black pearls. On day 46, I was hunting an alpha mosasaur, but just like the alpha Tuso, it was stuck in a rock. What is up with alphas and rocks? I was a bit worried that I wasn't going to be able to hit this one, but thankfully there managed to be a little gap I could squeeze in where I could just reach the mosasaur. Like the Tuso, I spent quite a lot of time smacking away at this creature, and after defeating it, I got some nice black pearls and the alpha's tooth. I then hit up another drop, and this one actually had a great Thyla saddle. Too bad I didn't really need it as I had already done almost every cave I could use the Thyla in. On my way back to base, I noticed that there was a 140 Giga in the volcano, and I wanted it, though I wasn't sure how I would get it, considering it had already taken a nice stroll into the lava. I thought about making some behemoth gates to trap the Giga away from the lava, so I went and farmed up some organic polymer, because I didn't feel like making more hard polymer. So I finished off day 46 by beating up penguins until they told me where they were hiding all of their organic polymer. Day 47 began with me actually getting decent loot from a supply drop. I managed to get some nice ascendant ghillie pants, some sap, and even a double bed. Now, back to the gigantic issue at hand. I wanted that Giga, but I decided that it might be better if I use metal gates instead of behemoth gates. So I crafted up some metal gates. I also made up 100 trank darts, so there was zero chance of me not being able to knock this dino out. And then I got on my RG and headed out. I'd like to say this adventure went well, that I set up a trap and the Giga went straight into it, but that isn't quite what happened.
No! Look at him, he's just fucking stupid. Bro, come on, get out of there. No! Oh.
After dealing with that absolutely stupid situation, I opened a drop and managed to get an ascendant pair of flippers out of it. I then ended day 47 off by farming hide in the redwoods with my Thyla. Day 48 started off with another amazing drop, giving me a great pair of ascendant fur boots. I then spent a bit more time destroying the dino population on the island before heading back to base and dropping off all my hide. And then finally, my prayers had been answered. there was now a 150 male Rex wandering around near the redwoods, and I wanted it. So I set up my trap, killed off its fellow companion, and trapped it and knocked it out. And by the end of day 48, I now had a breeding pair of Rexes, and the Rex army could begin forming. Day 49 had me back in the redwoods killing more dinos for hide. You see, I had done the math, and to make 19 of the Ascendant Rex saddles, I was going to need 692,493 hide, 364,458 fiber, and 91,105 metal. So it was going to take me ages to get all of that. I did end up finishing day 49 off by robbing another wild spino of its sail though. Day 50, I'm still out in the redwoods for the entire day. Keep in mind, my day-night cycles roughly equal to around 30 to 40 minutes, so I've been running around the redwoods for a while just trying to get hide. Once I was back at base on day 51, I checked on my breeding theories and then threw out my brand new Rex, breeding couple, and got them to start getting down to work. I then checked the Spino eggs and then the Indie Forge, and I noticed that the forge was starting to get a bit low on metal. I didn't want this forge to run out of metal because of how much of it I needed. So after sorting out some items, I headed off to my home away from home and proceeded to smack up some metal, with me returning just before the end of day 51. Day 52 was a day entirely spent around farming. I started off by delivering more metal to the forge and then hopping on my theory and farming up all the fiber I would need for the Rex saddles. Because of how much fiber I need, it took me the entire day of day 52 and ended up rolling into day 53. I finished farming up all the fiber I would need for saddles halfway through day 53. I then used the Dino Finder to see if another Giga had spawned in, but sadly a Carcharodontosaurus had. So I headed over to the volcano where it had spawned just to see that it was fully in the wall. I couldn't get an angle on it to kill it, so I had to use some of my magical powers to put it down. But I didn't take any of its resources. I then found myself back in the redwoods killing more dinos for hide. Day 54 started with me putting away the hide I had gathered, and then with me trying a new tactic to get hide. I read that if you take an army of 3 or so theories into the swamp and let them just rampage, that they'll be able to get you loads of hide. But that was wrong. Not only did they harvest less hide than my Thyla, they kept filling up their inventories with wood from accidentally hitting trees, so I was constantly needing to empty their inventories. As day 55 rolled around, I tried hopping on one of the theories myself and tried using it to farm hide. It was good, but because of how slow it killed compared to my Thyla, it wasn't that good. I still decided to give it a fair try, so I used it for most of day 55. But in the end, I decided to go back to my Thyla. It's just too much of a weapon not to use, and no theory could compare to its kill speed and harvest amount. So day 55 would end with me being back to my old ways, running around on the back of my Thyla, challenging anything and everything to a fight. Day 56 began with me putting around 50,000 hide into my vault. I then hopped onto my Pteranodon and headed all the way over to the other side of the map. And that's because it was time for me to challenge the hard underwater cave. This cave took me a while. Considering every few meters I would need to stop and fight more creatures. It was just a constant battle to get through. Not to mention, I did also get lost in the cave. It has a few paths you can follow, and because I had never done this artifact before, I was pretty lost. Finally, on day 57, I managed to find the hole I needed to go in to lead me to the artifact. So I headed into this real cool lit room with ruins. I needed to fight so many creatures in there. But once it was all done, I was able to claim the artifact of the cunning and head back to base. I spent the rest of day 57 getting ready to go and challenge both the caves in the ice. One of them is really easy, and one is by far the hardest cave on the island. Day 58 began with power leveling 2 Rexes I'd be taking into one of the caves with me, and I also crafted a chainsaw. I know that this isn't part of the island, but I was getting desperate for hide and I was willing to grab a chainsaw to try and get more. I then used my Daajjeey to heal up the dinos I would be taking into one of the caves with me, and headed over. The first cave was the artifact of the Skylord. This is a very small set of tunnels that dinos can't fit in, so it's up to me to work my way through it by myself. Thankfully though, because of my amazing shotgun, this wouldn't even be a challenge, and I easily got the artifact. The next cave, however, wouldn't be as smooth. The artifact of the Strong Cave is difficult. Not because the cave is terrible to traverse through, but because of how many creatures are in there. From the Yetis to the Palovias, there is a lot, and they all are really high levels. So I'd get to a room, throw out my Rexes and the 2 Thylers I brought, and just whistle them onto aggro. This would work for the most part, but Palovias was still an issue. I didn't bring any explosives to blow them out of their holes, so I just threw a creature on top of their holes to lure them out. That was until I stopped paying attention, and this happened.
My other Rex gone. No. Please. Why? Why are they just standing there?
After that annoying death, I did however manage to return back and grab my gear. Day 59 and the hunt for the artifact of the strong continued. I did die a few more times in this cave, but each time I was able to get back and grab my gear, until eventually I made it to the artifact
I'm literally
room.
just gonna...
But I wasn't willing to fight all the
over to
creatures
it.
in this room. So I simply grappled over, grabbed the artifact and made a run for it.
Let's get out of here.
Managing to escape as the sun was setting on day 59. To finish the day off, I placed down another vault, but this one would be used to store all my extra dinos that I didn't need in there. I didn't know what I wanted to do with them yet, but I was sure that I would find something to use them for. Day 60 began with me seeing if my Rexes had given me another female yet, and thankfully they'd given me a level 234 with a mutation. I then headed over to the cave that contained the artifact of the pack. This cave is nowhere near as difficult as the previous caves. I wrestled with some Sarco and stole their skin for tributes, I beat up some Onyx and managed not to contract Mega Rabies, and then I grabbed the artifact of the pack and headed out.
Let's grab that and let's get the fuck out of here.
Day 61 had me end up over at the artifact of the Devourer, and as you can guess by now, all I did was kill Onyx, spiders, and then grab the artifact and get out. Because I was still after Hyde, however, I did decide to kill every Onyx I could get my hands on. Afterwards, I hit up a purple drop with a ring and got an amazing Ascendant Anki saddle out of it. I then head back to base and chucked the artifact with the rest of them in the vault. And I now had every artifact I would need. I finished off day 61 by looking through the theories that had been hatching whilst I was away and seeing if any of them had any good mutations. On the morning of day 62, the worst thing happened. I opened up my Indie Forge and found it empty. So you know what that means, it's time for a metal run. I hopped on my Pteranodon and headed out. Once I made it to the volcano, I put my RG and Anki to work. Then head back to base and transferred more metal into the forge. Whilst there, I checked to see if my Rexes had laid any more females. Thankfully, they had, so I threw them out and got them to start breeding. I then spent the rest of the day doing more metal runs and filling up the forge again. Day 63 was spent just like day 62, with me continuing to do metal runs and looking after my Rexes. In the end though, I knew getting these Rexes the Ascendant saddles would be well worth it, if I wanted them to survive the boss fights that were approaching. Day 64 and I was back out in the Redwoods getting more hide on my Thyla. At this point in time, I had realized that there would be no way I could get all 19 Rexes in Ascendant saddle and still have time to challenge all the bosses. So I was determined to at least get as many saddles as I could. I did try using a chainsaw on a body, but it just didn't give enough hide and took way too long to harvest compared to my Thyla. Day 65 started off with me putting away all the hide I had collected on my trip to the Redwoods. I then spent some time checking up on the Rexes. By this time, I had so many females pumping out kids that I was actually ending up with too many Rexes. But it did however mean that I was getting quite a few mutations in there. But sadly, I hadn't gotten a melee mutation. I so quickly made up another chainsaw and then head back into the Redwoods and got bored. So I decided to take on a Titanosaur with my Thyla. Due to the Thyla's bleed damage, this was a piece of cake. And before long, the oversized dino was dead and I half-sewed its body up with the chainsaw. But by the end of the day, I was back looking after Rexes and sorting them out based on their levels and mutations. Day 66 began with me hunting down some mammoths in the snow, trying to get hide and fur. I then head back to base and made a crafting skill tonic. Then head back out into the snow and killed more mammoths for some reason. To be quite honest, I can't remember, I probably didn't get enough resources. Once I was done with the mammoths, I went back to base and used the crafting skill potion and made more chainsaws. I was hoping that the crafting skill potion might help make better chainsaws, but sadly it didn't work. But because I wasn't going to let the crafting skill potion go to waste, I decided to start making some of the Rex saddles. Some came out good, some not so good, but I was just glad I didn't waste the crafting skill brute. To end off the day, I began making all the theory saddles. On day 67, no, I will not make a stupid 6-7 joke. I had done some research and found out that for some reason, Ovis drop an insane amount of hide. So I decided to do the only thing I could. Tame some up, get them to breed, and then murder them for their hide. But being the idiot I am, I didn't realize that Ovis are a passive tame. And also that they needed sweet veggie cakes. So I would need to do that first. Sweet veggie cakes require a few ingredients. They needed honey, sap, rocker rot, long grass, savaroot, stimulant, and fiber. So I would need to get a lot of these items. I headed back to base and quickly set up a garden. It wasn't big, but it would do the job. And remember guys, size doesn't always matter, right? Right? After getting all the seeds I'd need, by swinging my Bronto's tail a few times, I went and laid my seeds and now had a fully functioning garden. Obviously, after putting lots of dino's poop in there to fertilize them. This garden would solve my rockerroot, longgrass, and savaroot problem, but I still needed honey, sap, and stimulant. I started day 68 off by making some bug repellent and grabbing my ghillie armor, because I was about to go rob some bees of their honey. So I headed out into the redwoods with my few pieces of ghillie I had on and some bug repellent sprayed, and I began grabbing honey. Whenever I'd grab honey from the bees, more often than not I would get stung. There is better ways to do this, but I wasn't willing to set any of these other ways up. But this solved my honey problem, and I already had a little bit of sap and fiber back at base, so I was ready to make some cakes. So I went back to base and made some of the veggie cakes, but I wanted more. I headed back into the redwoods and grabbed even more honey. After crafting more cakes, I ended up with a total of 16, which would be plenty. So I headed out and began Operation That's Some Nice Looking Hide You Got There. By the end of day 68, I had obtained a fair few overs, so I threw them out at base and got them breeding. I also set up a terminal next to them to grab the children. Day 69 started off with me already putting an Ovis down. I was curious to see if Ovis really did give that much hide, and I can confirm that Ovis do give a lot of hide. I then looked through the baby Rexes and then headed back out into the redwoods to kill more creatures for even more hide. You see, the best way to get the most hide from the Ovis is to let them level up and then pump all their points into health. So I need to let them sit there and level up for a while. Day 70, I rampaged through the redwoods and nearby forests, and that's it. I'm not even kidding. I sat there skimming through that 30-minute clip trying to see if I did anything other than kill dinos for hide, but I didn't. That's literally all I did on day 70. On day 71, I first started by putting away all the hide I'd collected. I then got another Oviraptor, you know that second one I tamed previously? Yep, I couldn't find him, so I just tamed a new one. This was because I wanted to start collecting Rex eggs. By now, I had more than enough Rexes with mutations for an army, so I thought I may as well use their eggs to help power level the army. To finish off day 71, I noticed there was another Giga on the map. It was a very low level, but it was going to be mine, no matter what. Day 72, and I was out in the snow taming up this Giga. I had a lot of trouble getting it into this trap, because for some reason, it was stubborn. Eventually, I did manage to get it in there, and with the power of my rifle and some hardcore narcotics, I managed to knock it out and tame it up. I then took it for a ride, and sadly, it was very underwhelming. Its damage was amazing, but like I expected, its hide collection was terrible because of its level. But I wasn't gonna let the rest of the day go to waste, so I headed out to tame up some Uterannuses. So I picked two, like Pokemon, and decided to catch them. I very quickly figured out, however, that I hate taming Uties. Not only was it too small to fit in my gates, it would just squeeze through them. It kept fear roaring my Argy, so I would spend 20 seconds with no vision and my Argy flying around like it was missing its head. So I gave up and just shot it on foot. And this almost went terribly, but it didn't. So by the end of day 72, I had knocked out my first Utie. Day 73 and my first Utie finally woke up. I then head over to the second one. After dealing with its entourage, it decided to fall in the tunnels below the snow. So that's where I would knock it out. This did prove to be quite difficult, but in the end, the Yudi was out and they would now be mine, and breed my boss Yudi. To finish off day 73, I was back at base leveling up some of my Ovis, before I decided to put them down for their hide. The Ovis farming continued into day 74. I tried killing and harvesting an Ovis with a theory to see if it was any good, and it was, but not better than the chainsaw. I decided at this point in time, it might be a good time to start power leveling my Rex army, considering I wanted to start going into the boss fights. So the rest of the day was spent with me giving my Rexes saddles, throwing out some baby Spinos, killing them with the Rex, after making my Lystro do a backflip to give even more XP. I did want to get this power leveling done now so my Rexes would have enough time to heal fully before going into the boss fights. Day 75 and the power leveling was still going on, but that wasn't the only thing I did. I decided to sort out all the structures I had that were in my smithy taking up room. I then looked into how many more Ascendant Rex saddles I could make, still being annoyed that I wouldn't be able to saddle all my Rexes. I went and did something that never let me down, farming metal. I then returned and crafted more polymer and electronics so I could repair my chainsaws because I was determined to try and get as much hide as I could. Day 76 was spent with me purging more Ovis for their hide. That was until I came up with an amazing idea. All those spare dinos I had been keeping, I finally realized they weren't spare dinos, they were spare hide. So I grabbed a bunch of them out of the vault and took them down to the beach, and after throwing them all out and whistling them onto passive, the culling began, with my Thyla and I slowly working our way through them. By the end of it, I ended up with another 12,000 hide. Not too bad of a haul if you ask me. Day 77 and I was back making more electronics for my chainsaws. I then went back to killing Ovis, but I tried a new way to harvest them. I piled all of their bodies onto each other and harvested multiple Ovis at once. This gave me the great idea to kill off the rest of my Ovis, but I made a massive mistake. I forgot to turn them to passive, so I accidentally started an all-out brawl between my Ovis that were still tamed and the ones that weren't. But in the end, they all were put down. I piled them all into the corner, and you can see from the number in the corner of my screen, you can see that I was getting lots of hide from this. I ended up with almost 100,000 more hide. Day 78 started with me killing off some of the spare Rexes I had for hide. I then checked to see what I was missing to make another crafting tonic, and I just happened to be missing rare mushrooms. So I went and visited the beavers and stole not only their rare mushrooms, but also all of their pearls and cementing paste. Once back at base, I made some more stimulant, then made a crafting tonic and began making more Rex saddles. By the end of crafting, I had made 8 more saddles. For the most part, this was going to need to do for now, but some of the saddles came up with amazing levels of defense and some not so much. I then finished up day 78 by saddling up some more Rexes for the boss fight. Day 79 started off with me grabbing my tributes for the Broodmother boss fight. You see, over the next 10 days, I wanted to get all 3 of the tribute bosses out of the way. So once I had grabbed the tributes, the Rexes I was going to use, and all the gear I would need, I headed over to the Green Obelisk. Once there, I threw out all my Rexes and my Yudi, put all the tributes into the terminal, and teleported into the fight. Let's do this. Okay, this is going alright. Broodmother is going down. I don't think we're taking too much damage. Come on, don't let any Rexes fall, guys. Just kill her. She's almost there. Come on. There we go. Take her head in the element. Once I was teleported back out of the arena, I grabbed all my Rexes and shoved them into my pocket, and then finished the day off by putting the flag up. Now, the Broodmother was the fight I was most confident in, because it's the one boss I had challenged before. But the Megapithecus and the Dragon, I had never versed before. So I didn't really know what to expect. On day 80, I was leveling up my theories, getting them ready for the dragon fight, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to use them anymore. After seeing how well my Rexes held up in the Broodmother fight, I was a bit more confident they could take on the dragon. But nonetheless, I spent most of the day leveling up the theories and then trying to make more veggie cakes, but I had run out of sap. So I headed over to the redwoods and set up some sap taps, and farmed up some more honey whilst waiting for the taps. Day 81 and I was still grabbing honey from beehives, but I had managed to actually get a bit of sap from the taps. So I headed back to the base and made a few more cakes, but whilst I was at base, I realized that I was still missing a few tributes. So I spent the rest of the day farming up tributes. I started by heading out to one of the artifact caves to get some Megalania toxin. There's a trick where you can knock one out, grab its toxin, and then let it wake back up and can farm toxin that way. But I killed my first Megalania whilst it was still asleep. So I ended up killing another one to grab its toxin instead. Next on my list was Spinosaurs. I still needed 2 more Spinosaurs, so I headed out and hunted down 2 Spinos and made quick work of them with my shotgun. I also needed some more Allosaurus brains, so I hunted down some of them and took their few remaining brain cells. I then needed a few more UD lungs. Once I had those, I was pretty confident that I had all the tributes, but I would later find out I was still missing 1 or 2. Day 82 started with me grabbing some tributes out of the vault, because you guessed it, I'm going to go and fight the Alpha Megapithecus today. So, after grabbing the tributes and the Rexes, I headed over to the blue obelisk, threw out the Rexes, and teleported into the fight. I had never done this boss, so I was a bit worried. After defeating the Megapithecus, I grabbed my Rexes and placed the flag down back at base. Day 83 began with me looking at the gravesite of bags that were on the beach where I had been killing off my dinos for hide. I also crafted some Ascendant Flak Armor. After that, I finally realized what tributes I was missing. To fight the Alpha Dragon, I needed Basilosaurus blubber, so I headed out and killed some Basilosauruses. Until finally I had 10 blubber, and after a while I had all the tributes I would need to fight the dragon. As day 84 began, I started off by making some more bullets. I then went over to my vault and started grabbing out the rest of the tributes I would need to begin the Alpha Dragon fight. I had decided that after how well my Rexes had held up in the first 2 boss fights, that they would be the creature I would bring into the dragon fight. I just had to hope I wouldn't regret this decision. So I took my Rexes over to the red obelisk and began the Alpha Dragon fight. Oh my god. Come on boys, out of the fire! Out of the fire! No, he's standing in the lava. I can't get my UD out of the fire! Fire! No, that's terrible. Keep going, Rexes! Ignore the fire, just keep attacking him!
Oh my god, I defeated him without losing a single Rex. Holy shit. Fuck that. Yes!
With the Alpha Dragon defeated, I decided to head over to the tech cave to make sure I had every tribute I would need. I found out that I was missing Alpha Lead Blubber, and there currently wasn't one in my world, so I was going to need to deal with that. So once I got back to base, I instantly headed out into the ocean to begin killing creatures to try and clear up some spawns, hoping one would spawn in before I ran out of time. Because I value your time, I don't want to try and make something interesting out of nothing. Day 85 and 86 was spent entirely in the ocean. I was killing everything I could find, trying to clear up spawns for the Alpha to spawn in, and on the morning of day 87, I killed an Alpha Mosasaur, before I finally decided to take a break from the ocean, for now. After dealing with the Alpha Mosasaur on the morning of day 87, I decided to hop back on land and kill some Alphas on land with my shotgun, just for a change of pace. So I started hunting Alpha Raptors, but clearly I should have stayed in the water, because whilst trying to kill one, I accidentally shot a Titanosaur, and let's just say it didn't go well. Even though my PT was dead, there was a 152 so that I wanted to tame, so I continued on foot to its location. On day 88, I began trying to tame the Tuso. Thankfully, I had a theory in my inventory, so I thought this might be a good time to use it. Whilst I was busy trying to kill off some of the sea creatures that were attacking me, my theory got grabbed by the Tuso, so I said fuck it and hopped off my Bassie and swam straight for the Tuso's mouth, and I managed to tame it. With my new Tuso, I decided it was time to continue purging the ocean, trying to get the Alpha to spawn, and finally, at the end of day 88, one spawned in, and I had my final tribute. Day 89 and I was looking at a tech replicator. I wanted to bring the tech chestplate into the final fight with the Overseer, just in case all my Rexes fell and I would need to solo the Overseer. But before getting started on that, I headed back over to my sap taps to grab the sap from them. Once I was back at base, I was trying to see where I could craft the replicator, considering it said it could be crafted at a fabricator. But after searching through the entire fabricator, I couldn't find it. So for now, I put that on hold and made more veggie cakes for my theories. I then headed out with my Tuso to go and kill other Tusos for their black pearls, as I would need 150 for the replicator. Day 90 started off with me leveling up all the theories that I was going to bring into the tech cave with me. I then made a few more basic Rex saddles and also power leveled some more Rexes and saddled them up as well. I started day 91 off back at the volcano farming obsidian because I was going to need lots of polymer for the replicator, which is what I started crafting as soon as I got back to base. I then decided to have a new PT, so I picked one that was nearby and knocked it out in a very unique way. After taming up my new PT, I leveled it up and took it to go and grab the sap from the sap taps, and I finished day 91 off by making even more veggie cakes. Day 92 and I was mining crystal in the volcano for the replicator. I then hit up a drop and got a good pair of fur boots. Afterwards, I headed over to one of the obelisks and finally crafted the replicator. I then set it up back at base and made the tech chestplate. Then head back out to the sap taps and hit up drops for the rest of the evening, just in case I could get lucky and get a good theory saddle blueprint. I finished collecting drops on the morning of day 93, then head back to base and sort out all the loot I had gotten. I then head out to kill penguins. I wanted to make some ascendant gilly for the cave, but it was going to require a lot of organic polymer, so I needed to wipe out pretty much the entire penguin population to get enough. Day 94 and I was still killing penguins. I did however return back to base and craft the ascendant ghillie leggings that I wanted, but I still needed more to craft the rest of the armor, so back to the snow for me. On the morning of day 95, I managed to finish making all the ghillie armor I needed. I then grabbed my Rexes and head up to the volcano and began throwing them out in their line. I did make a rookie mistake though, and threw them out before getting them to follow each other, so I did need to redo it, but I ended up changing the strategy just before entering the tech cave anyway. Day 96 started with me organising what gear I'd need for the tech cave. I then continued to grab more sap, and Blue Gentleman subscribed to the channel, so thanks Blue Gentleman. I then spent the rest of day 96 grabbing more honey and making more cakes. I was getting really sick of making veggie cakes by now. Day 97 began with me going on a treasure hunt because, for the most part, I was ready for the tech cave. I decided it'd be a good time to go and dig up some treasure. I had obtained an ascendant map on like day 20. I just never thought about grabbing the treasure, and it came back to bite me on the ass. Once I finished ripping all my hair out, I returned back to base and was able to make 2 of the new Ascendant Rex saddles. I then hit up a yellow drop with a ring that had some pretty good armor in it, mainly the Ascendant Fur chestplate. Afterwards, I grabbed all of the Alpha tributes out of the vault and made more bullets. Day 98 began with me giving the tributes to my UD to hold on to. I then returned back to base and finished making more shotgun shells. I then returned back to the volcano to start putting some berries in the Theres inventory, so they wouldn't straight away eat the cakes. When I started to put them in, I was really worried about my army walking into the lava. So I tried setting up some gates to block them, but it didn't work too well. So I went and grabbed some more sap and came up with the brilliant idea to fill the volcano with boats. That would hopefully mean if any creatures did walk in, they'd end up walking on one of the boats instead. Day 99 and not a lot happened. I finished up final production of veggie cakes and put them in the Theres inventory. I also filled the volcano with as many boats as I could make, which meant my volcano turned into this monstrosity. I then waited for day 100. Something I don't have footage of is me changing plans last second. Because of the soul ball mod I was using, I decided that no matter what, I wanted to make it to the Overseer. So I decided to go on Mission Impossible style and parachute my way through the entire tech cave, and then throw my creatures out on the final platform. I know some of you will hate this, but to be honest, I had spent so much time making this video, and I didn't want to finish on a loss. So that's exactly what I did. As it turned to day 100, I opened up the tech cave and headed in and began gliding my way to the platform. I then threw out all my dinos and teleported us. I then walked them all over the Overseer's bridge and began the fight.
Alright, boys! He's here! Get your game faces on. It's time. Get him! Ah, attack droids! Get him! Ignore the fire, boys! I'll draw you! Fuck him up! There he is! No. There he is! Oh, he's destroying him! I don't know what he is right now, but I think he's the Brood Mother. This is your chance! I don't want to say my Rexes are shredding this boss, but I think my Rexes are shredding. Get on him! Bro, my Rexes are menaces. Keep going! Oh my god, he's fucked. Look at his health go. He's dead. He's done. He's fucking wiped. Dog shit. Spit on. Okay, boys, come. You know, I reckon my boys could handle another phase if they wanted.
I had lots of fun making this video, but it was lots of work to make. So if you could leave a like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. And comment down below if you'd like to see me attempt to conquer Scorched Earth. Thank you so much for watching, and bye for now.